right now on Indianapolis This Week.
We don't give up on any street corner, any neighborhood, or any human being.
An open conversation on a new approach. Today, how faith-based groups plan to step up to stop the violence. Will this effort really work? Plus, a Hoosier history maker.
Success is being able to laugh at yourself if you look down halfway through the day and you've got two different colored shoes on.
Our one-on-one with the only woman on the bench of the state Supreme Court. And the list Dan Coates and other politicians want to be on.
From RTV6, the Indy Channel, this is Indianapolis This Week with Rafael Sanchez.
Leading on faith, the city is counting on faith-based community groups to help reduce violence in our city. City leaders are moving forward with community conversations about crime. The first forum was held Thursday, and Mayor Ballard was just one of the many officials at that meeting. People in attendance say they're concerned about young teens getting wrapped up in violence, and police say it's something they need your help fighting.
13, 14, 15, 16-year-old is at the party, decides he's going to act out and been forced to leave. An adult gives him a gun, and he decides to fire a shot through the house and kill the 13-year-old child. So when we talk about this conversation about curfew, it is a community conversation. We're not Big Brother trying to tell you what to do with your children, but ask yourself a question. What do you want your 13-year-old to be at 11 o'clock at night without some type of adult supervision or guided, structured activity? What would you want them to be?
Joining us now is Reverend Charles Harrison, the president of the 10-Point Coalition and pastor of the Barnes United Methodist Church. Welcome to the program. How will this partnership with the city be different than other things we've heard of in the past?
Well, I really think this time we're really focusing on what the root causes of the violence are. And in previous years, we have really focused on the law enforcement piece. How do we lock people up who are committing these crimes? But we understand that that really hasn't been effective over the years. And we really have to deal with what the root causes are and build a much broader coalition. And that's what I think we have done here. It is a broad coalition of both public and private sector. The urban core and suburban businesses and churches are really coming together to look at how we can reduce this violence by dealing with the root causes.
I do not doubt your sincerity. I do not doubt your passion, you or Reverend Ellis. I've been here 16 years as well. I've covered this issue for many years, but it's always the same thing. The city comes to the church sometime in February, and by November we forget. How will this be different? What different things will you be doing so that the public can say, okay, we get it?
Well, for instance, what we do with 10-Point, we engage people on the street, and we're trying to tell people, not to commit violence. But it's difficult to tell someone who is on the street selling drugs, got guns, involved in criminal activity, if we really don't have anything to offer them to get them to put that gun down and to stop selling those drugs. If we can use some of the national models, and I think that's what we're moving to, in cities across the country where this has worked, particularly in New York City, where they have invested $178 million in addressing the issue that are facing men of color. If we can begin to get the private sector and the faith community and the city and law enforcement working together, I think this time is what's going to make it different, because we have to put resources with the strategy. We can't have a strategy without resources, and the resources have to be a major component of this strategy.
Have you been given a budget? Will it be that high? Will it be $50 million, $100 million? Do we know how much money you will be receiving or you'll be working with to make this happen?
We don't know yet, and that's what the task force that's going to be announced, I think maybe sometime next week, that task force will begin to look at best practices across the country, what we're doing here well, and look at some of the budgets across the country to see what kind of resources we're going to need to put to this in order to make this successful.
How should we hold you accountable? Again, I think there's a lot of people who want you to be successful. I don't think there's not one person out there who doesn't want to see you and the other groups do something to prevent crime or to reduce crime. But how will I hold you accountable in a year's time?
If we're given the resources, then I think people can begin to measure our success or not. I think the frustration from the faith-based community is we're being asked to build brick without straw, and we don't really have the resources to really address the problem on the street. I think if we're given the resources, and then people can begin to measure the success or not. I'm measured by the number of homicides each year, whether or not we're successful in aggravated assaults. If that's not decreasing and declining, then apparently the strategy that we're using is not successful, and we welcome that.
a year from today, and I'll invite you back to this program, where should we be? Knowing what you know right now, where do you want to be a year from today when I invite you back to this program and say, Reverend, how are you doing on this initiative?
If the resources are put on the table, we need to be below 100 criminal homicides. We need to be below that. We were in 2009 and 2010 because more resources were put on the street. I think we have to begin to measure in those terms. There's a reduction in aggravated assaults, robberies. Those are the things that we need to measure once this initiative is given the resources that it's going to take to be successful.
Reverend, we'll have this discussion before. I'll see you many more times before next March, but I'm going to welcome you back next March.
Thank you.
To see how well you're doing.
Thank you.
Reverend, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Joining us now are two of our political insiders, Democrat Laura Beck and editor of IndyPolitics.org, Abdul Hakim Shabazz. You just heard from the Reverend. Will this work?
It depends. It really does. And I think what's different about this time is, will the community step up and be involved and engaged? I asked I was at that meeting this past week, and I asked one of the
and it was jam-packed.
Yeah, jam-packed full. I asked one of the neighborhood folks, what is different about 16th and Tibbs and, say, the Geist Reservoir neighborhood? And the gentleman was pretty blunt when he said, you know what? The folks up in their neck of the woods, they would not tolerate this type of behavior from their young people running wild. We need to do the exact same thing. So if the community steps up and fills in the void, the police and the faith-based community, you know, the prosecutor's office, they can't do it alone. Community steps up, we solve this problem.
I think, you know, the work that the faith-based community is doing is incredibly laudable, and it's incredibly important. And I think that the community conversations we're having right now are absolutely essential. But it also speaks to a larger, more comprehensive approach. I mean, we realize we are understaffed in our police department. So you've had Rick Snyder on for the FOP talking about what can we do there to bolster that. How can we in the community work together? I live in an urban neighborhood in Irvington, and I will tell you that in my neighborhood, we really look out for each other. We have active crime watches. We pay very close attention to what's going on. And so we can't expect public safety and law enforcement to do it all, but we all as community members, the community as a whole, we have to work together and look out for each other.
As the Reverend was talking, he was talking about, obviously, this would be a budget issue, that they would need some sort of money.
Yeah.
Last week, Rick Snyder was on this program talking about a public safety tax. How do we fund this? Who pays for this? Because at the end of the day, you heard him, he needs the bricks, he needs the straw to make it work. Are we going to pay for this?
Well, part of that equation, some folks who were also at that meeting, was the charitable foundation community, where there was CICF and some other folks, and you go to the places like the Lilly, the Cummings, that make the donations, for the not-for-profit organizations that have a proven track record of success. Because part of the problem is there's so many people with good intentions who all want to start 501c3s, start this program and this program. Unfortunately, a lot of them don't have the proven track record. So I think that's where the money comes from.
Funding for law enforcement and funding for local government, law enforcement as a part of that, has been absolutely eviscerated during these legislative sessions. And that's one of the reasons why Mayor Ballard stood up and said, no, we can't have this business personal property tax because it takes away from these core city services. So I think that there has to be a greater understanding at both the state and the local level, and people in your communities. If you want these services at some point in time, you have to pay for it. We have to figure out how to do it.
At the State House, we saw the Speaker today refer to the Ethics Committee, the issue involving Representative Eric Turner of Cicero, asking him, hey, take a look at the situation because Mr. Turner may have used his influence to in some way stop some nursing home legislation. Where will this go?
Well, I've been in contact with a number of state Republican lawmakers, and this is a lot more complicated than people think. It's not just the Speaker asking Chairman Greg Steuerwald, or the head of the Ethics Committee, for an investigation. These allegations were based on comments that Eric Turner reportedly made in the Republican caucus. So guess what? Everybody who's in the Republican caucus is now potentially a witness to go before the Ethics Committee what was said. And here's a conflict. What happens in caucus is supposed to stay.
Talk about it,
it's supposed to stay in caucus. It's supposed to be private and quiet.
And you can read the cheat sheet to find all this out, because I read the cheat sheet today while I was on my way.
And if you read it, one of the questions was, will they have to punt this to maybe an independent investigation? Because not only was the Speaker more likely there, but also the Chairman and the other two Republicans on the Ethics Committee in that room.
And this is something that your party, if I may call it your party, the Democratic Party, asked the Speaker to look into this.
Yeah, so Chairman John Zodi sent a letter basically and called for it publicly, calling for this. And I think that the Speaker is I think, a guy who plays plays chess instead of checkers. And when you think about some of the angst that Representative Turner caused this session to his caucus, it is also, you know, I don't know if this is part of maybe getting him in line on that, but at the same time, you know, Representative Turner is innocent until proven guilty. But what it does is it sets the tone for Speaker Bosma and how he runs his caucus, and that he is going to give fair looks at these type of things. So, right thing to do, probably.
We'll see where it goes. Let's look a little global this time. Of course, we know that the United States and Russia are at odds over what is happening in Crimea. And of course, both countries are now obviously putting sanctions on each other. One of the sanctions that Russia put out was sanctions against a number of U.S. politicians, including our own Senator Dan Coats. And he put out his own sort of Dave Letterman tweet out this week. Among his top 10 tweets, number 7, I should say, I won't be able to ski on the slushy slopes of Sochi. And the number 1 tweet for Senator Coats, as he put to us, our summer vacation in Siberia is now a no-go.
So does he really tweet himself? He's really funny. He's a funny guy.
What will this mean? I mean, are we going to take this issue very seriously, or is this an issue where, as the countries each put sanctions on each other's politicians and high executives, will this go anywhere?
Well, the real thing is going to be is when it starts at the brass tacks. You know, we say Dan Coats can't go to Sochi. We say, well, no, Vladimir Putin's hairdresser can't, you know, come to Miami. I mean, this is a kind of a little tit for tat. Where the rubber really starts at the road throw is when the International Monetary Committee starts putting some hardcore sanctions on the Russians. Already, their bonds have been downgraded, drove their stock market down, you know, another 10%. That type of activity continues. We're going to see some serious problems on the Russian side.
And Lara, this is one list that both Democrats and Republicans want to be on. They want to be on the Russian list because at this point, we don't care what Russia thinks.
Well, I think, you know, if I had unlimited time and resources, I would become a Russian history scholar because it's so fascinating.
It's very depressing, is what it is.
It is slightly depressing, although, you know, you're my personal rescue here.
Why, thank you.
But I think it also goes to show, though, that Indiana, even though we may be out here in the middle of the Midwest, we certainly have a high profile, and even though we count, and you know, even though there were some flip tweets and some humorous tweets, it does underscore the very seriousness of the situation and how Russia is behaving under Vladimir Putin.
And he was the former ambassador to Germany, so I think Russians really know who he is. Thank you for joining us. The conversation between our insiders continues on Twitter. Check out their Twitter handles and give us your opinion. And stay with Kip, Abdul, Lara, and Jennifer throughout the week. After the break, the move to get some of your favorite stores to stop selling cigarettes, and later, an exclusive chat with State Supreme Court Justice Loretta Rush. We'll be right back. Joining us now is RTV6 State House reporter Katie Hines. You sat down with Indiana Attorney General Greg Zeller. You talked about a number of issues, but the big one involves the sale of cigarettes.
Yeah, you know, Greg Zeller is joining 27 other attorneys general across the nation to ask a number of pharmacy chains to stop selling cigarettes. The group sent a letter to Walmart, Walgreens, Kroger, Rite Aid, and Safeway asking the retail stores to take all tobacco products off of the shelves. They argue it's contradictory to have dangerous and devastating tobacco products on the shelves of stores that service healthcare needs. The push comes 1 month after CVS announced it had quit selling cigarettes and cigars.
I think the call by my colleagues, the attorneys general around the states, who've had to deal with the problems of the costs of health care, the casualties, the rate of death in the United States due to cigarettes, really is about time that we focus on it as a very unique product and one that ought to be treated separately.
What about all those issues regarding the lawsuits on marriage? There are 5.
Yes, we touched on that with Attorney General Greg Zeller. He says his office is prepared to fight them.
Thank you. Our TV6 State House reporter Katie Hines, thank you so much. Coming up next, the state's First Lady and her goal to make a difference in Indiana. Indiana's First Ladies are known for taking up different initiatives to better the lives of Hoosiers. Current First Lady Karen Pence is carrying on that effort, but she's focusing on helping a wide range of issues. I sat down with the First Lady to talk about her approach. The First Lady of the state of Indiana is here to talk about her charitable foundation. Tell us more about that foundation.
Well, we decided so many groups were approaching me and telling me we'd love for you to get involved in this and this and this and this, and all worthy causes. But I just felt like I was constantly saying no because I just couldn't do everything. But I thought if I start a charitable foundation, that would allow me to be able to take small grants to all of these areas and have maybe a $500 or $1,000 grant, draw attention to some of these great causes that we have in Indiana, and other people would get involved. And so that's what I decided to do.
Are there specific groups you want to target because you are a lifelong teacher? You love young people, you love education and reading and those kinds of things. Will it only be about education, or will you focus on health care and senior citizens and those kinds of issues?
That's a great question. I started thinking, there are three things that I do know something about, and I know a lot about children, and I know a lot about families, and I do know a lot about the arts. And so that's going to be our focus, but we're also focusing on good citizenship, where a need might apply, where we might give a donation to a library that maybe needs it. We might be a family group in another part of the area. It might be something that reaches out for children's health care, not necessarily focusing on health care, but things that benefit children and families throughout the state.
Do you know how many folks you want to help, or groups? Because this could be individuals or groups.
Right.
Right?
It can.
So do you hope to help 5, 10, 15? Is there a number that you hope to reach every year?
And we don't know yet. We have our fundraiser is going to be a big luncheon on April 30th, and that day we actually will award, and each spring at the luncheon we'll award one large check to one charity that we feel benefits a lot of people around the state. So this year we chose Riley Art Therapy, and so that will get the bulk of the money that we raise at the charity luncheon. And then throughout the year, though, we'll keep some money back in the foundation where we can give maybe 1 or 2 a month, where we head out and showcase some of these great areas.
The groups that receive the money, do they have to commit themselves to sort of paying it forward? I mean, is it enough just to receive the grant from your foundation? Do they have to use that money to improve something and move that cause further, or is it just about getting the money?
It's about drawing attention to that cause. For example, a couple of weeks ago, we went to 3 areas in the state that benefit families, and we started doing our research, and we started realizing, oh my gosh, we have this fabulous program in Richmond. We have this fabulous program up in Gary. We need to start just letting other people know about those places. So it's going to be more about, the grants aren't an enormous amount of money. They're $500 or $1,000. But just by going, having a press conference, letting other people in the community say, oh, here's this Birth to 5 program where I didn't even know that's right around the corner from me. I can go volunteer there. So it's more about drawing attention to those groups or individuals.
Thank you to the state's First Lady. Next, our exclusive chat with the Supreme, Justice Loretta Rush, after the break. Loretta Rush is among the many people who works on the 3rd floor of the State House. But when she puts on her robe, she assumes a role only 4 others can claim. State Supreme Court Justice Loretta Rush in the Sunday Spotlight.
Success has been raising kind children. Success is taking challenges, taking risks. Success is being able to laugh at yourself if you look down halfway through the day and you've got 2 different colored shoes on. And then, I mean, most of all, success is at the end of your life. It's Irma Bombeck said, you want to stand before God and say, I've used everything you gave me.
And have you done that so far?
I try.
How do you encourage other people to follow in your footsteps, if that's possible? Because you are a history maker. You are one of the few women who's reached this level. So how do you get others to say, you know what, I'd like to follow in her footsteps?
I think you have to push yourself. I mean, I grew up, I moved 16 times growing up. My dad worked for the railroad. I had a speech impediment, moved every year, was always the new kid, put myself through college, put myself through law school. I guess just pushing yourself. Don't let anyone say, no, you can't do that, or this isn't available to you. Be able to say, yes, I can, or find somebody that's done it before you. I talk to a lot of young women, right, and young people that are looking at the profession. If this is your passion, find something that is your passion, and then it doesn't seem like it's work.
You talked about that you had a speech impediment. You couldn't tell that now. How did you overcome that, and how do you use that experience to say, you know what, I can do whatever I want to do? I know now. I mean, you talk to my colleagues on the court, they would probably laugh. I don't even know if they knew that. It was ours, like Loretta. I was Loretta Rush.
I think that, again, you don't let that define you, or you don't let, we all hit bumps. It's not perfect for all of us. And, persevering through those and saying, and also, when I went to law school, it was just when women started kind of coming on. It was a small percentage of our class were. And when I was a partner in my law firm, I was the first woman partner in my law firm. Or even just, when people came and asked me to consider applying for the Supreme Court, it was, you say, you don't want to look back in your life and say, I wish I would have tried this. So sometimes you're going to get these things and sometimes you're not, but I think the really good things in life can happen if you take a risk and be open to new things.
Justice Loretta Rush, thank you. That's it for this edition of Indianapolis This Week. I'm Rafael Sanchez. For your latest news and weather, remember that we are always on the RTV6 app and our website, theindychannel.com. Make it a great Sunday, and we'll see you next week right here on Indianapolis This Week.